to keep me company. Seems nobody wants to hire a real private dick anymore, a professional like me. A guy who does the detective work nobody else wants to do. A guy who wears hats and walks around in a black and white world. I began contemplating a more profitable line of work, like politics.
We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to you.
All right, folks. Good morning and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN Radio Central. Let's do some housekeeping. You can join the conversation for the next hour at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Our text line, that's up and running at 617-297-8388. 617-297-8388. Text it like you would anyone else. It does appear on a screen here in the studio in real time. We try to work it into the conversation. And don't forget that the station does stream 24/7, like thousands of other radio stations do, to the TuneIn app, which means you can take us anywhere. And I love that feature. I use it all the time, every day. You can also tell Alexa to play WCRN, and she will do that with no questions asked. That's a great feature as well. Now, I do stream the show on multiple platforms, so you can always go to the station's Facebook page and YouTube channel, listen and watch there as I broadcast from the Cameo studios, meaning the Cameo cam is on. Ted A is behind the glass, flying the board back at HQ, and he'll get you set up and into the studio for two-way talk and conversation at 508-871-7000. Now, I'm also streaming it to my social media platforms, so you can go to my X account, the show's Facebook page, Twitch TV, LinkedIn profile, and Rumble, TJM Show channel on Rumble. The show is turned into a podcast and distributed where you get your podcasts, like Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, etc. All right, that takes care of some housekeeping. And let's move on to some of the stories today, because I got to tell you, yesterday, right? California, statewide primary election. Now, California uses this top two primary system, where the top two vote getters, regardless of the party affiliation, advance on to the November 3rd general election. Gavin Newsom is term limited, so this is an open seat. Now, around 60 or 63% coming into the studio today. You have Steve Hilton, the Republican, right? Former Trump advisor, former Fox host or contributor, leading with almost 28%. And Xavier Becerra, they're at 25 or 25.5%. So, my friends, California, right, should be the easiest state in America to govern well. Think about what God gave. All right, God gave California geography. It gave it the Pacific Ocean, the beaches, the redwoods, mountains, deserts, farmlands, ports. Silicon Valley. It has Hollywood, right? Capital of entertainment. Has energy potential. They messed that up. They don't even allow the drilling of pipelines. They're going to import it from other countries. Agriculture, tourism, technology, defense. It has higher education, right? Caltech, Berkeley, and population larger than many countries. California is not some backwater trying to figure out how to attract opportunity. California in itself is opportunity. And yet somehow the political class in Sacramento and Los Angeles has taken one of the greatest pieces of real estate on planet Earth and turned it into a case study in one-party decline. California's economy is still enormous. In 2025, California's GDP was about $4.3 trillion with the T, $4.3 trillion. That's roughly about 14% of the entire U.S. economy. And the state ranked as the fourth largest economy in the world when compared with nations. Now, I know Gavin Newsom, when he's asked about the sad state of California, he says, well, we got the fourth largest economy. Yeah, Gavin, it has nothing to do with you. It would exist as the fourth largest economy, whether you were there or not, whether you were born or not, whether you were governor. You have absolutely nothing to do with that. That's like taking credit for blue eyes. You have nothing to do with that. That means California is not just a state problem, California is a national problem. When California works, America benefits. When California breaks, America feels it. And that is what makes the decline so infuriating. Because this is not a state that failed because it lacked resources. It failed because it lacked restraint, accountability, balance, and of course, law and order and common sense. For decades, right, California has been dominated by one-party Democratic rule. The result is, well, predictable. When one party controls the machinery, as they do in Massachusetts, long enough, it stops governing and it starts ruling. Sounds familiar, right? Well, there is no serious competition, no meaningful fear of being fired. See, no corrective mechanism here. So no humility. No one has to answer for bad policy because the same people who caused the mess run the next campaign. And of course, they promise to fix it. It's job security. And so the cycle continues. High taxes, high housing costs, homeless encampments, open-air drug use. And then there's the whole nasty part of these encampments and the drug use, which it's the middle of the day. You know what people are stepping over and having to deal with there. Then there's retail theft and energy cost, huge water mismanagement. We'll get into that in a second with the mayor's race and the Palisades and all that. Sanctuary policies, which, again, I've said this, I can't count how many times I've talked about this. There is no such thing other than you just standing up in a room and saying we're a sanctuary city. There is no mechanism to opt out of federal law, folks. So that's just you violating your oath as a governor or a mayor, holding or tying the hands of the police behind their backs and not cooperating with ICE. But they have these sanctuary policies, which everybody was okay and totally violates the oath that they took when they took these various offices. And I mean from governor down to chiefs of police to city councils and the whole drill. Then you've got the businesses leaving, families leaving, middle-class Californians looking at Arizona, Nevada, Texas, Tennessee, Florida, Idaho, and saying, why am I still here? And if they can afford it, they make the arrangements. California actually lost population for the first time in its recorded history in 2020. The State Department of Finance reported a decline, right? 182,083 people. The first annual population loss since the state began collecting those estimates in 1900. So 120 years, California was the Mecca. California people just sought California. They headed west, my friend, whether it was for Silicon Valley or education, and then they stayed there, or it was to, break in and make it big in Hollywood, whatever the reason. Maybe they like to surf. Who knows? The point is, since 1900, have gone into that state, then have left that state. And it declined for the first time in 2020. And while the population later stabilized somewhat, the underlying problem has not disappeared. California is still a net domestic margin lost, or migration loss, rather. 216,000 people between 24 and last year. Meaning, more people move out to other states than move in from other states. That is for a state with California's natural advantage. That is not bad luck. That is due to policy. Now, here is the question. Why do Democratic voters keep voting for the same party that presides over this decline? Why? Right? You know the definition of insanity, right? Part of the answer is culture. Part of it is institutional. And part of it is media. Part of it is public sector unions. Part of it is the sheer size of the Democratic registration advantage. As of the 2026 primary registration numbers, Democrats made up 45% of California registered voters. That's a lot. Republicans, about 25%. In no party preference voters, they're at 27%. That's what we call, right, independent and so forth, or unenrolled. That is a huge structural advantage before a single ballot cast. But another part of the answer is Republican and conservative turnout. Do conservatives in California, do they just give up? We have this problem in Massachusetts to a degree, right? Look at what happened in New York. I think about 8 million people. Mamdani got in to be the mayor of New York because millions of people did not vote in that election. If we had some kind of rule that everybody had to vote, and this is hypothetical, folks. I know you can't compulse people to vote and all that. I'm saying, but if everybody just, grew up with the understanding that it's such a responsibility and privilege to be able to vote, so everybody took it as seriously as maybe you and I do, and everybody voted, what would our political landscape look like? Because I got to tell you, incumbents like low voter turnout. It's predictability. When it's a low voter turnout, that means just the real activists, the committed people who vote in every election are coming out, and because of their registration affiliation, party affiliation, and how they registered and their voting history, and you can pretty much know who they're going to vote for. And you can almost predict the election based on that. But boy, incumbents hate high voter turnout, right? So when there's something on, say, a ballot question, or even in the presidential year, voter turnout inches up a little bit. It doesn't go to 90%, but it goes up. And then that presents unpredictability, and that scares the bejesus out of incumbents because they don't know what's going to happen, especially for those people who don't usually vote, and now they're a little frustrated or pissed off. So they're not allowed to talk. They're not allowed to say anything aloud. They're not allowed to even discuss it maybe with their spouse. So they just keep their mouths quiet. They go into the voting booth when they have that opportunity, and things change. So did conservatives and common sense voters in California just give up because it's stacked against them? Has that happened here in Massachusetts? We don't have one Republican member of Congress in all of New England. And now we'll get to Platner and Collins and so forth in Maine. So that is the question. Because if you live in a state where you believe your vote will not matter, eventually people stop showing up. If it doesn't matter and you seriously believe that it doesn't matter, I'm not saying it's a huge inconvenience to vote, right? It's minutes, 5-10 minutes. Each one of us can drive to our polling places. There's never a line where I vote. I walk in, check my name, go right to the booth or the curtain or whatever we want to call it, and I'm out in minutes. So did they just stop showing up because of that? They stopped volunteering. They stopped donating. They stopped running. That's the other thing. Candidates, very hard to come by on the right side. They stopped fighting City Hall. And then the people who caused the decline, they can say, well, see, there are no Republicans here. No, there are Republicans. There are conservatives. There are law and order Democrats. There are independents. There are parents and business owners, police officers and firefighters, taxpayers, homeowners, renters, immigrants who came here illegally, and working people who know the state is going in the wrong direction. But political despair is real. The despair is exactly how one-party rule survives. The machine does not need you to love it. It just needs you to believe it cannot be beaten. And that brings us to Gavin Newsom. Newsom is not the beginning of California's decline. He is the polished spokesman for it. He is what happens when style replaces substance. He speaks in the language of compassion, equity, not equality, right? Equity, climate, justice, and progress. But he lived the experience for too many Californians is disorder, unaffordability, insecurity, and managed decline. California under Newsom has tried to sell itself as the future. But for many working families, the future looks like a U-Haul headed east. And this matters nationally because California still has massive political power. It currently has 54 electoral votes, the largest bloc in the Electoral College. But the dominance is not guaranteed forever. California lost a congressional seat after the 2020 census for the first time in history. And population trends could cost it more representation after the 2030 census if current patterns do continue. Now, that is the political price of mismanagement. And now let's talk about California elections. Why does California take so long to count votes? When Florida can do it quickly, they count very quickly. Now, that all stems from the hanging chads, right? All of that. California said, wow, we're the laughing stock of the entire country when it comes to elections. Let's fix that. And DeSantis has a lot to do with that too. Now, that question is not crazy, right? It's not extreme. It's not anti-democracy. To ask why the largest state in the country, with Silicon Valley in its backyard, cannot count votes in a timely manner. California law gives county election officials a 30-day canvass period to count every valid ballot and conduct a required post-election audit. California also sends mail ballots broadly, just mass mail, right? Opposed to how things used to be done and they should be done. The only time they mail a ballot out is when you've initiated it. It should only be, I'm talking about how I think it should only be, how it used to be before the pandemic, how it used to be before the bastardization of the election system. If you were going to be out of town, or you're serving overseas, even if you have a medical issue that makes mobility difficult, you call your clerk's office and you ask for an absentee ballot. And they send the ballot directly to the address of you registered, sign it, witnessed, send back. They check the signature and they put it in the absentee ballot. But no. They just mail them out broadly. And they accept ballots postmarked by election day for days afterward. And has a labor-intensive signature verification process. Now, Florida, by contrast, requires faster receipt and reporting procedures, reports early voting and vote by mail totals quickly after polls close. There's not a lot of confidence when you see the votes and then they, oh, well, we got to count the absentee now, right? The ballots, and it changes the election. You know that undermines the trust factor. Florida's election reporting timeline requires preliminary election night returns, including early voting and already tabulated vote by mail ballots to be reported shortly after the polls close. So the official explanation is this: California prioritizes access and extended ballot processing. Florida prioritizes speed, deadlines, and fast reporting. The AP described the difference this way. Florida reported more than 99% of the ballots within hours in 2020, while California took nearly a month to finish, largely because of different state laws and election administration choices, right? But here is where the public trust is going to break down. When people are told, don't ask questions, don't you ask more questions? When people see one state count quickly in another state takes weeks, they wonder why. When they watch leads change after Election Day, they also wonder what's happening. Pennsylvania 2020. When election officials say everything is secure, trust us, that's not enough. Anymore for sure, but was it ever? Trust is not demanded, it is earned. You can't say trust me. And anytime somebody says to you, trust me, don't you instinctively say, oh, this is all BS coming now, anything after that phrase. Now, do I have evidence that California is slowing the count so officials know how many ballots need to be stuffed? No, I'm not saying that outright. No, not at all. That should not be stated as fact without proof. But I will say this, slow counting creates suspicion. Long delays create room for doubt. A constitutional republic should want election results that are secure, transparent, audible, and fast enough that citizens are not left wondering what is happening behind the curtain. Florida proves it can be done better. California proves what happens when access is treated as the only value, and confidence becomes an afterthought. And that brings us to Los Angeles. The LA mayor race is becoming a national symbol, right? The Pratt's campaign ads have just lit up social media, has lit up the way elections are done. Trump changed it with social media. Pratt's changing it with AI. Mayor Karen Bass advanced to the runoff after failing to clear the majority threshold, 51%. So Spencer Pratt, yes, Spencer Pratt has emerged as a serious challenger. Bass, well, before coming into the studio this morning, Bass was roughly at 34.8%, Pratt at 30.4%. That's amazing. And Rahman is 22.3%. This is, again, the partial results, and they're coming in as I'm talking. Now, put aside celebrity for a moment. The real story is not Spencer Pratt's fame. The real story is not, or rather, the real story is that Los Angeles is so dissatisfied that an outsider campaign could break through against the incumbent mayor of one of America's most important cities. Why? Because LA residents have lived the consequences: homelessness, fires, public disorder, budget problems, crime concerns, and a sense that the city's leadership class is more concerned with ideology than competence. Reports on the race noted that Bass faced criticism over her handling of homelessness, city budget decisions, and her absence during the deadly 2025 fires. Now, while Pratt, he built his campaign around that frustration with leadership. That is what happens when voters stop asking who has the perfect resume and start asking who actually sees what I am living through. And that is how he started. He didn't start to run, by the way. He started by saying, look what's going on. There's got to be a better way to do this. He looked he started with proving all of the mismanagement and lies that they were putting out about the Palisades fire, where he and his wife lost everything they owned, where his parents' home also burned to the ground and lost everything there. His childhood there, their parents lost everything. So that is what happens when voters stop with the resume and ask, do you see what is going on? California is beautiful. California is powerful. California is important, but California is also a warning. It is a warning that no state is too rich to be mismanaged, no economy too large to be damaged, no city too glamorous to decay, no political machine is too entrenched to be questioned, and no citizen should ever be told to shut up, accept decline, and keep voting for the same people who made life worse. The question of California conservatives, Republicans, independents, common sense Democrats is simple. Are you done surrendering? Because one party rule only ends when voters decide they have had enough. California does not need to be abandoned. It needs to be contested. It needs law and order. It needs election confidence. It needs affordability. It needs energy realism. It needs school accountability. It needs business sanity. It needs leaders who understand that compassion without order becomes chaos, and freedom without responsibility becomes collapse. California is not a lost cause, but it is a state running out of excuses. And my friends, when paradise starts emptying out, maybe the problem is not the people leaving. Maybe the problem is the people governing. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. 508-871-7000. Let's go to the phones real quick. Mark's waiting patiently before we have to take a break. Hey, good morning, Mark. What say you? I didn't. Mark, all set. Oh, wait a minute. Try now.
Oh, hello.
Hey, gotcha. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Mark.
These overeducated knuckleheads, all right, and that's what they are, who are running England. They better wise the blank up and do it quick, because England is on the verge of a civil revolt. Mark my words, and look up what's going on in England, and they have their own George Floyd there, except he was white. And he was stabbed 5 times.
Yeah.
Okay.
Henry
Now
Nowak.
the British police refused up until like 2 days ago to release the video film that shows the manner in which this man died in the negligence of the British police, and the British are up in arms, almost literally. Of course, they don't have the right to bear arms. If they did, they'd probably be in open revolt right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Henry Nowak, I'm actually going to talk about him, Mark. It's because I agree with you. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Very frustrating. How about we dive into that topic after this break? But we're going to take our mid-show break here on the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. 508-871-7000. 508-871-7000. Lines are open and available. Talk to you on the other side, folks.
WCRN.
Buy new furniture, design your new furniture. Visit O'Shea's Furniture in Sutton, and you will be able to work with the staff to design your furniture from the frame up to include the color and style of the furniture. O'Shea's works with Amish furniture makers, and they will build your furniture to your desire with quality craftsmanship and quality materials, and the price is competitive. Check them out online or stop into their showroom on 113 Singletary Ave, Sutton. You won't be sorry you did.
Lower temperatures often bring that little scraping and clawing sound in your ceilings and walls. You know the one. Time to call ProTech Pest Control, the pest extermination service of Worcester County. Fully licensed and insured to handle any job. With ProTech Pest Control, you're guaranteed a quick response with flexible appointments. Enjoy the benefits of living in a pest-free environment. Call 508-757-2409 or visit protechpestcontrol.com.
The best Italian cuisine served by some of the nicest folks you'll ever meet is at Ziti's Italian Trattoria. It's fine Italian cooking at the Speedway Shopping Center, 290 Turnpike Road in Westboro. It's like sitting down with your family for an authentic home-cooked Italian meal. From intimate dinners to catering for events of all sizes. From pizzas and calzones to classic Italian dinners. Every meal at Ziti's is one you'll remember. Head on down to Ziti's, 290 Turnpike Road in Westboro.
WCRN Radio is thrilled to bring back a legendary voice, and now you can help tell the stories. Paul Harvey captivated millions with his unique style and unmistakable voice. By sponsoring the rest of the story, your brand can become a part of this rich tradition, and it links your business with a program that people love and trust. So don't miss this unique opportunity to grow your business while becoming part of something truly special. For sponsorship details, just go to WCRNradio.com.
All right, folks, welcome back here to the second half of the Wednesday morning edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show at AM 830 WCRN. Reminding you, folks, that you can always join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Follow me on my social media platforms at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. And you can always go to Rumble if you want to watch past shows. You can always go to the station's playback link if you'd like to listen to today's show or any former show, or of course go to joemangishow.com and or just subscribe for the podcast version of it. So Mark brought up, going into the break, Henry Nowak. Now, this is another I can't breathe tragedy the media won't exploit the same way. You've heard the phrase I can't breathe before. It was weaponized for years after the George Floyd riots. Statues torn down, cities burned, defund the police, endless lectures about systemic racism. But now we have the tragic case of an 18-year-old, Henry Nowak, in Southampton, England, and the silence from the usual suspects is deafening. Now, I know it's England, and they have a different set of laws and court systems and all of that. But it's still a lesson, because to Mark's point, they are headed for a civil revolution. I have mentioned this multiple times in the last few months because I see this on my social media feeds, the stuff that's coming out. I've covered some of the absolutely ridiculous stories of arresting people, not even for posting their idea, but for liking or sharing it on a social media platform. So Henry Nowak, again, another I can't breathe tragedy, is coming out of England. And this is a horrific case. And it's Southampton, if that matters to you. 18-year-old University of Southampton student, described by the sentencing judges, much loved, kind, hardworking, and ambitious. The first in his family to attend university. And back on December 3rd, he was walking back to his university accommodation when he crossed paths with Vikram Singh Digwa. And the judge found Henry was alone, unarmed, and not drunk. His blood alcohol level was below the legal driving limit. But Digwa was carrying a large dagger in addition to a smaller kirpan. Okay. Now, according to the story, the judge said Henry made a cheeky comment about asking whether Digger was a bad man, likely because he had seen the visible dagger. Digger then moved toward him, took Henry's phone, and during the struggle, deliberately stabbed Henry in the chest. That was a fatal wound. It punctured his lung and cut an important vein. And the pathologist found more than 2 pints of blood in Henry's chest cavity. Digger also stabbed Henry in the upper leg and lower abdomen, groin area, and slashed his face. The judge found Henry was defenseless. Digger then filmed Henry trying to get away. And according to the judge, he showed callous disregard while Henry was suffering on the ground, bleeding out in front of him. The outrage comes from what happened when the police arrived. Digger falsely claimed Henry had racially abused him and assaulted him. And the judge in this case says, Henry said nothing racist and called Digger's accusation one of many lies. Digger and his brother repeated those lies to police while the murder weapon was removed from the scene. So police show up. Henry's on the ground, bleeding out, can barely breathe or talk as his chest cavity fills up with blood. And these jamokes say he made racial comments. And the police don't investigate. They don't even administer first aid or help. They slap cuffs on the kid on the ground because they've been so conditioned and they've gone so bizarro world over there that they just take that at face value. Now, I don't know how the laws work over there, but there's got to be reparations to those police officers. They certainly should never, ever be allowed to carry a badge again. According to Henry's father, Mark, Henry told officers he could not breathe 9 times and said he had been stabbed 4 times. A police officer reportedly responded and said, "I don't think you have, mate." You know, they talked there. "I don't think you have, mate." Henry was pulled across the gravel. His hands were forced behind his back. He was handcuffed, formally arrested for assault, read his rights. His father said that was the last thing Henry heard. This has now been raised in the Parliament, UK Parliament, where officials acknowledged the public shock over the body cam footage and the need for full investigation. They tried to not do this at all, right? They tried to not release the body footage. Starmer hasn't commented till the last couple of days, and this happened back in beginning of December. Hampshire police and the crime commissioner, Donna Jones, said Henry was falsely accused of racially aggravated assault as he lay dying there. That officers did not believe him when he said he had been stabbed and could not breathe. I don't even know how to wrap my head around that. Are police officers in England blind? Can they not bend over? Can they not touch, feel, smell? I mean, how do you not check this person bleeding on the ground? And officers didn't believe him when he said this. And the police response raises serious questions about impartiality, right? Fairness, judgment. Where the hell is your judgment? Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary apologized and referred itself to the Independent Office of Police Conduct. Woohoo, good for you. Digwa has been convicted of murder, sentenced to life with a minimum term of 21 years. So I guess life is just something you say. His mother was also convicted of assisting an offender after the murder weapon was taken away from the scene. Now, you know, we'd call that after the fact here, right? This story is not about blaming an entire faith, an entire ethnic group, or an entire community. Henry's family specifically warned against turning his murder into broader hatred. See, the blame for the murder belongs to Digwa, full stop. But the policing or the policy question is unavoidable here, right? A dying young man said, "I can't breathe." He said, "I've been stabbed." He said it again and again. Go to my webpage, go to my Facebook page. I've shared the footage. It's there. You can watch it and listen to the police officers in real time at this body cam footage that they finally let out. He said it again and again. And the system treated him like a suspect because the police show up. Digwa says, "You assaulted me racially. That's all. Boom, boom." They didn't say, "Are you okay, mate? Does anything hurt? Are you bleeding? Why are you gasping for air and wriggling on the floor? Could you tell me why?" No, they didn't do that. They turned him over and put cuffs on him and dragged him. That is the story. That is what happens when police and institutions and public officials become more afraid of being accused of bias than failing to see the truth right in front of them. The accusation of racism became louder than the dying victim did. The narrative overtook the evidence. The officers had a man on the ground saying he had been stabbed and could not breathe, and yet they believed the man standing nearby, right there, the killer, who had every reason in the world to lie. So Henry Nowak, 18 years old, a university student, first in his family to go to university, walking back to the dorms. They say accommodations over there. College kid going back to the dorms, alone, unarmed, whole life ahead of him. And he crosses paths with Vikram Digwa. It doesn't matter what religion Digwa is. It doesn't matter. It matters how the police handled it. And then the aftermath and the way the media gave this story a good leaving alone until the body footage came out and things started to get tough over there for them. Thank you, Mark, for that call. But yeah, tended again getting on this. But I got to talk about our neighbors to the north, Maine, who used to be part of Massachusetts, right? I don't know, everybody knows that. Maine was Massachusetts. It broke off, became its own state. But my friends here, politics tells you a lot about a party's priorities. And not the slogans, not the campaign ads, not the polished little speeches about decency and democracy and character and protecting children. I mean, the real priorities, who they defend, who they excuse, who they fund, who they rally behind when the facts get ugly. And that brings us to Maine Democrat Graham Platner, right? Now, the National Review framed this perfectly. Democrats have tied themselves to Platner, and walking away now would mean admitting his critics were right all along. That is the political trap. Once the Democratic establishment decided this guy was their man against Susan Collins, they had no problem. Every new revelation became not just a Graham Platner problem, but a Democratic Party problem. And the revelations are not small, and they seem to keep coming. Platner is the progressive Democrat running for the Senate seat, U.S. Senate seat in Maine. Now, he's a Marine veteran, an oyster farmer. I mean, that's what he lists. It doesn't produce any income. He lives off his military disability pension. Mom and dad gave him and the wife the money for the house, and the mother gave him the money for this oyster farm that it's a hobby, not even a business. And he's he grew up living in a privileged life, but so oyster farm is probably a stretch. And the kind of candidate the left loves to package as authentic. Bernie Sanders backed him. Elizabeth Warren backed him. Chuck Schumer met with him and publicly said, hey, we're going to beat Susan Collins and take back the Senate. So Chuck is a schmuck. We know this. But they're more important with that Senate seat and power than the character of Platner. That's what's important right here. And this guy has been packaged. This is not a grassroots candidate. So let's stop it here. The Democratic Party that lectures America about standards, tone, decency, and of course, character, and protecting vulnerable people is now standing behind a candidate facing a mountain of controversy. Now we've got this Platner sent sexually explicit text to women outside of his marriage. And there are the resurfaced old Reddit posts where he called himself a communist. His words. Wasn't someone calling him that on Reddit. He said, I am a communist in his Reddit post. He attacked rural white Americans. He used slurs, insulted the police, wants to defund them. do away with Homeland Security, and make grotesque comments about sexual assault victims. And of course, now, folks, then there's the tattoo, a skull and crossbone designed resembling the Nazi Tattenkopf. Now, he covered that up when it became a political liability because he loves to take his shirt off. I mean, if you had a Nazi tattoo, wouldn't you keep your shirt on in public at all times? Wouldn't you not post to social media with your shirt off? That's all on him. And now, according to the Maine Wire, a parental rights group in Maine is doubling down on its demand that Platner be barred from school property after new controversy over sexually suggestive kick account. According to the Maine Wire, Platner's Rights in Education Maine wants schools and public officials to prohibit Platner from holding campaign rallies or political events on school property. Yeah, this guy is such a scary creep that the parents' organizations don't want him anywhere near the schools, i.e. their children. In this whole sexting thing, the wife gave that up. Back in the beginning, because look, when you run for office, happened to me when I ran for state senate, the party sits you down and they say, okay, what do we need to know? Is there anything that's going to come up? What are your skeletons? Have you paid your taxes? Have you had a restraining order? Any kind of domestic call? Do you have a vindictive ex somewhere? They ask you all these. And the wife said, well, there's my husband. I busted him doing all this sexting. Yeah, thanks, honey. You don't have to be a political or a politician's wife or husband, spouse to know that in this world, even if you think that might be the smartest thing to do, that's not going to make its way out there. It's going to get leaked. It's going to make its way into the media at some point here. So let's be careful and precise. The Maine Wire notes there is currently no indication that Platner used the app to contact minors, and that matters immensely. We do not convict people on things without evidence. That is not how conservatives operate. We believe in facts, due process, and truth. But parents do not need a criminal conviction to say, hey, we do not want this kind of controversy brought into our schools. That's the point. Schools are not campaign playgrounds. They are not political stages for scandal-plagued candidates, right? They are not props for politicians trying to lauder their reputation through photo ops with children. Parents have every right to ask, why should a candidate with this much baggage be holding events on school property? And notice the double standard. If this was a Republican candidate, if a Republican had a Nazi-style tattoo controversy, sexually explicit messages, sexually explicit messages, that's almost a requirement for Congress today, right? Crude internet posts, public sexual behavior allegations, anti-police comments, and parental rights group asked that he be kept away from the schools. Do you think Democrats would say, let's focus on the issues? Of course not. They would call him disqualified. They would call him dangerous. They would demand every Republican announce him by lunchtime. They would make it a national purity test. But because Platner is useful to them, we usually call them useful idiots, because he may help them defeat Susan Collins and possibly take back the Senate, suddenly the party of moral superiority becomes the party of political convenience. Even Cory Booker admitted he has concerns. Cory Booker, guys. And he said Platner has questions to answer. But what did Booker immediately pivot to? Winning Congress, taking power, beating Republicans. That tells you everything. This is not about morality. It is about the math. Democrats see Maine as a pickup opportunity. Susan Collins is the Republican they want to knock off. Republicans currently hold a 53-47 Senate majority, and Democrats need net gains. To take control, So the calculation becomes simple. If Platner can win, we'll tolerate almost anything. Almost anything. So this, where's it going to go? I mean, they can't, you know, in the primary, the other one wanted to remind everybody that she was still on the ballot. So this segment isn't about what the Democratic Party is willing to ignore when power's on the line. They call parents extremists for wanting transparency in school. They call conservatives threats to democracy for asking basic questions. They call law enforcement racist when police enforce the law. They lecture the country about decency. Enough, my friends. This is not principle. This is hypocrisy with a campaign budget. 508-871-7000. Let's go to phones. Ken is waiting patiently. Hey, Ken, what say you?
Hello, Joe. I could easily speak on the three issues that brought up today, but you got a local fire in Worcester County. Rutland, 4th of July. Have you heard about that one?
No.
Oh,
No.
they're canceling it.
Rutland's canceling the 4th of July celebration?
Yeah. They typically have 3 days of festivities, and it's all again flushed down the toilet.
Why? What's the reasoning?
Oh, they don't have money.
Okay.
They're demanding the 2.5 be overridden, and this is the penalty that we Patriots have to pay.
Ah, okay. There you go. All right. You don't override and give us more money that we can mismanage, so we'll take your toys away.
Don't they in your your relatives would call that extortion, and sort of like what a mafia would do?
It's totally. The Democratic Party works in the same principles, basically.
Right. They're way worse than the old mafia.
At least the old mafia had a code. Yeah. Crazy. No, I didn't hear about that. But, you know, I mean, look, there's been a lot of communities that have legitimately had to forego or scale down because of budget concerns. But this, and I don't know the background to this story, Ken, but it sounds like it's a straight up,
Joe,
you know, taking the Xbox away from your kids because they didn't behave right.
Joe, they're firing policemen on July 1st. So they say, oh, we don't have the staff July 4th. Oh, what a coincidence.
Unbelievable. I'm not real familiar with Rutland. Is it, again, is it, I know that usually the town councils aren't party affiliated, but, and this is why, folks, right? Ken, we've said it on this show a million times, pay attention to local small races from dog catcher up, because that's the farm team. Today's selectman or city councilman is the state rep, and then could be the congressperson or senator 15, 20 years down the road. And so you common sense, middle of the road moderates, you need to get involved with the city and the town government. Otherwise, it becomes another fiefdom.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, the bottom line is 60% nearly are independent. Now, are they phony Democrats? Or they're just too scared to point and look at a wild-eyed lefty and say, enough is enough. You got to stand up, folks. If Rutland's doing it, there are towns that are going to jump on doing this. They want to beat the you-know-what out of us of being patriots. It's that simple. We have our own Civil War. And I know the Revolutionary War was 250 years ago, and people who live in Massachusetts despise our patriots of that era.
Yeah.
That's reality.
Yeah. It's amazing that in a little while ago, I was at a function, and I try to remember, it was in Boston somewhere, and I don't remember the venue. But I'm sitting at the table because there was a group of us that was representing Worcester area at the time. This is a few years ago before I moved out of Worcester. And I'm sitting there, and there's these two women, and they apparently were a couple, and they're chatting. And it stuck with me, Ken, because they're talking about that they live in Cambridge. So calling me surprised. They live in Cambridge, and they're talking about that the people who moved in I guess the next unit over or what have you. They had, and get this, they had the gall, the audacity, Ken, to put an American flag on their balcony. That's it. And they're talking, and they're like, they were totally appalled at this, that they can't believe that people like that have moved in next to them. Now, they were talking like you and I would talk about it if our neighbor put up the Nazi flag, right, or the Third Reich or something. They were so offended by an American flag. And they made the point that, you know, in their conversation, because I started to get involved in the conversation, and one of my friends with me from the Worcester area there, he's Tabby saying, don't, you know. So they said that they, because I said, what do you have on your balcony? And they told me a pride flag. So I'm assuming they're a couple. But they were so, I couldn't believe that they thought that the American flag, and that they expected, I don't know what they expected was going to happen from these people. But that you see it. You see it at the universities, in the blue cities. They target vehicles if they have any kind of patriotic bumper sticker or flags on them.
Exactly. It all started with academia, Joe.
Mm-hmm. True.
We have to go to the source and root them out.
You've been following this Hampton, England story with this Henry Nowak?
Yo, I just picked it up today.
Yeah. Go look at the body footage. It's absolutely disgusting.
But, Joe, you're wondering how in the world the police could have done what one person or whatever. They're trained to do that by the politicians. They're told you have to.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. They've been so conditioned that, and they're so afraid. The police officer, Ken, or constables there, as they call them, are so afraid that they'll be accused of not honoring or protecting somebody's ethnicity or race, or that they're bigoted, that they let an 18-year-old bleed out in front of them while they snap cuffs on them. It's crazy. Against the clock, final thought, Ken?
We have to stand up, and we have to stand up now.
Yeah. Because if we don't be careful, that's what's coming here. I mean, we saw that coming, and during the Biden administration, we were headed where England is now, and thank goodness we put some brakes on with Donald Trump. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate the call, folks. It's going to wrap up the Wednesday morning edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN. Have a fantastic day. Back Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Join me there. Follow me at Joe Mangie Show on my social media platforms. Joe out, guys.